Hello, I'm Julio Bastistos, and I'm a performer from a tiny island called Fishtown. Today's story is about my journey to a mythical place called Gloucester. God had sent me there to take a journey to find the big time. It took over 2 years by rowboat, using either or. I went through rivers and jungles. I rode across the Suez Canal, down the Niles River, which eventually empties into Niles Pond in Gloucester. Was it real, or was I inside some sort of fable? Did God send me here to find the big time? A place where the buildings are 3 stories high. Exhausted, I fell to the ground and dreamt. At least I think it was a dream. I started my voyage in a place they called the Rotary, a circle where people drove around and around and around. I was thrown from the circle and ran across a big bridge that was eternally under construction. Traveling to a state called Ipswich, I was attacked by green-headed bugs and fancy cars. I escaped to a place called Essex, where all the townspeople were asleep, or maybe kind of boring. I made my way back to the Gloucester, thrust into their rotary. I was spun around and around and around again, and out into a strange place called Riverdale. I fell into a quarry and sunk, past the little fishies, below the moss and granite, and a 72 Buick, and I landed on the floor of the quarry. I stood there and met with a monstrous cyclops with fangs and no arms. "Where is the big time?" I demanded. She pointed with her eye, and I ran, paddling my way out with my guitar. Next, I found myself in the roughest section of a place called Annisquam Village. It was dark. I was afraid to walk the streets. Voices from the houses yelled, "Go away, non-Annisquamer!" I ran as fast as I could, blocking my ears. I could not hear them. Further down the road, it was covered in a fog. Something they called a pot smoke. Legal. Through the haze, the sign said, "Entering Lanesville." I crawled below the mist, past the Birkenstocks and the beer cans, and I was brought to the Lanesville commander, Captain Carolyn Kirk. She pointed to a place called Rockport. I paid the Lanesville toll and left. The Rockportians, they pelted me with paintbrushes, trinkets, and knickknacks. They forced me to draw a red building over and over and over. "Why?" I asked. "Because it is an old fishing shack." When I could no longer draw, they tied paintbrushes to my hands and made me paint the red shack until I almost passed out. They made no sense. "What kind of a place is this?" They said, "It is Gloucester without booze." The lack of alcohol had driven them mad. I jumped off the ledge and into the water and swam. Days later, I awoke on a beach covered with sand. An oracle came and asked me had I paid the $20 parking fee. He gave me a message to take to the people. He said the carry-in, carry-out program now applies to the bathrooms. I guess the sewer had been outsourced to India, and running the pipes was going to take 7 years. I walked to Eastern Point. There was a gate guard who asked me, "Where are you going?" I gave him the secret password. "To the lighthouse?" He said, "Go ahead." While in Eastern Point, I got a job as a maid and had plenty of work repainting all the do not enter signs. But the big time was not there to be found, and I wound up back at the Rotary. It turned and churned, a blur of friendlies and badly made signs. A newspaper blew to my feet. It was 2015, the elections. Would people vote for Hillary or Safathia? The rotary spun like a giant roulette wheel, sending me to a place called Manchester. The woman behind the counter corrected me.
It's not just Manchester. It's Manchester by the sea.
I looked outside and saw a train closer than the sea. But shouldn't it be Manchester by the tracks? I asked. She scowled. I added, besides, it's an ocean, not a sea. I was banned and sent back to the rotary. Jettisoned to a metropolis called the Fort. The men said they call it that because they used to use guns to keep people away. But now they just use that bad fish smell. The sense of community was wonderful. They were connected. Mostly through drinking, fighting, and stealing purple bags from each other. But they also had a daily ritual where they all went together to the water's edge and looked over to the neighbors in Eastern Point. All together they gave Eastern Point the Gloucester peace sign, just with a one finger. This is love and the community. Well, still in this fictitious land of Gloucester, I wound up on a main street. And to make sure they did not become like Rockport, Gloucester had plenty of alcohol. Main Street had the bar, then another bar, then the liquor locker, and Halibut Point was a bar disguised as a restaurant. The movie theater served booze. Even the kids' clothing store had a wine tasting for the kids. I thought it might be illegal, but the police drove by and they toasted us. I went to church, and in the confessional, the priest wiped down the counter and said, "What'll you have?" For penance, he gave me 2 Harvey Wallbangers and a shot of tequila. No, Gloucester would not suffer the consequences of Rockport. And though drinking was on the rise, the smoking ordinance had worked and was on the decline. So here you might get run down by a drunk driver, but at least you know he won't be smoking. Suddenly, I awoke in the rotary. Was it all a dream?